What is the greatest theme song of all time? Yeah! Magnum PI! Check out that 80s dad rock vibe. I'm doing something a bit different today. I'm going to break this down and see what songwriting lessons we can learn from this classic theme song. But first, please like, subscribe, and share, and consider joining the channel. It really helps support my channel. And use my Plugin Boutique affiliate link on screen or in the description below to grab this and other crazy deals. First, a little background. Magnum PI was an immensely successful TV series that ran from 1980 to 1988. The show made Tom Selleck a massive star. It's hard to overstate how popular he was at the time. In fact, he was slated to play Indiana Jones, but CBS wouldn't let him out of his contract with the show, and we all know the rest of that story. Magnum PI was one of the first shows I saw when I moved to the US from Sweden in 1980, and I still remember running downstairs, where there just happened to be an old piano that came with the house, and figuring out that melody by ear. That's when I discovered I was a musician. Magnum is kind of foundational for me. And speaking of musicians, who wrote the theme music? Well, the now famous theme was actually the second theme song for the show. Check out this tepid disco turkey that fronted the first 12 episodes. Ouch. If they had stock music back in 1979, this would have been filed under generic thriller intro music a la Heart to Heart. Anyway, someone wised up over at CBS and hired two guys named Mike Post and Pete Carpenter to write a faster, stronger, better theme song. Now, to say this duo were theme song gods of the 80s is an understatement. Mike Post is the best known of the two, probably because Carpenter died in 1987, which left Mike Post to continue on his own, coming up with, oh, this little nugget you just might recognize. Now, I hear some of you say, surely this is the greatest TV theme song of all time. And you're almost right. But that fake MIDI guitar is way too loud. This song is dad cool as shit, but the obnoxious late 80s production lets it down. But it is a banger. So both men come from storied careers in music production and television music. Mike Post hails from Texas and produced Kenny Rogers in the 70s, and I hear a lot of that smooth 70s country sound in his work, and then pivoted to TV composing after that. This is where he met Pete Carpenter, who was already working as a TV composer and conductor at that time. I suspect he brings the symphonic elements to their arrangements. The two already had extensive TV credits when they came up with this number, their first Emmy Award-winning theme song. Oh yeah, check out that wicked out-of-tune Moog synth. I could listen to this song on loop all day and fantasize about being a swaggering private gumshoe. Still not the best, but I love it. Shortly after that, they got the call to redo the Magnum theme. Let's take a look at what they came up with. I think there are a lot of great lessons about theory and arrangement that we can learn from this song. The quality of the audio on the available videos on YouTube isn't great, but I want the original version, because that's the one I fell in love with. There is a re-recorded version that shows up on many TV theme song compilations, but it doesn't sound the same and the guitar solo is simply wrong. Anyway, I'll drag the theme into Cubase and... It's unclear if the theme is in F or E. I'm going to assume it's E because that's the rock and roll key. I just needed to tune it down 66 cents to get it down to E. Maybe it was an F after all, but it's hard to say because it could just be a videotape transfer. Anyways, E is cooler, I'm going to leave it at E. I'm going to start with the piano part to break down the theory, and add other instruments as I go. At first I thought it might be a Yamaha CP70 electric grand in this song, because that was very in vogue at the time. But upon listening, I think it's just a normal concert piano. And I think the original was tracked with a nice 80s chorus on it, probably a Boss CE2. It's got that thick undulating sound to it. Let's swap out the effects here for a chorus. Vintage chorus, perfect. Excellent. This song starts off triumphantly announcing itself with horns and drums, blasting the triad of G major in a set of syncopated triplets. This screams upbeat and exciting, but the triplets leave the listener a little off-kilter, and that's why we love triplets. So that GBD resolves to an E, and we're in E minor now, exactly where every rock guitarist wanted to be in the 80s. Did I mention rock guitar? Well, they add this pulsing 16th note almost funk guitar riff that fills out the holes in the arrangement very nicely. This is the real attention grabber of the intro, and I'll come back to this later. I do want to note how minimal and punchy the arrangement is here. You get sharp, fierce single stabs in E that have trade-offs between the orchestra, bass, and piano. I love how the piano only does a low E on the second downbeat. You know, it's tempting to have all the instruments do the same thing, but this has nice contrast between the instruments, a nice juxtaposition. And at the end of every first measure, we go to the minor third and second, and we introduce a chord pattern that is an element throughout the song. It's a G major to a D major, or non-inverted, with a G played on a third inversion, which connects with the D nicely. What's neat here is I expected this to be played with the F sharp on the bottom, but what the composers actually did was so it's coming from E, but they hold the A. That's a really nice melodic twist. We don't expect that. I thought it was going to be but it's actually an A. They just hold an A as a pedal on the bottom, which is just a really smart idea. That sounds really cool, and it's really punchy because the bottom piano notes and the bass are hitting those notes, and it's a nice stab. Bow, bow. You have that awesome juxtaposition, that counterplay there. And it gives us a compelling reason to get back to E. And at the end of every fourth bar, we go back to the triplets, which is great. And on the fourth and final measure of the intro, we get those triplets again. But what's this? We get a second set of triplets. And the notes change to an ascending pattern from the major third, which is B, in the G scale, which really enforces the scale that we're in. It almost sounds like a nursery rhyme. And we can also hear that the main melody smoothly evolves from these new notes. And we'll circle back to that when we do the strings. And after that, sure enough, we land on G. And that's where our GD inversion chord scheme comes back. Remember this from the intro? And now that's going to be our main motif. Except the D and G are played in a slightly different order than in the intro. And instead of going like, we're kind of going from the D to the G. And here's where I'd like to pause for a moment to discuss what I call the drop 9 chord trend of the late 70s and early 80s. By the late 70s, there was an arms race to make the smoothest jazz pop music after the massive success of bands like Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers led the charge. In 1979, Christopher Cross's eponymous debut skyrocketed up the charts, creating the definitive yacht rock record, with its air-conditioned production, complex jazz flourishes, and earnest lyrics. I mention this specifically because I think Christopher Cross is the biggest influence on this theme song. And he's one of the best examples of the drop 9 phenomenon. This is the sound I'm thinking of. So it is the drop 9 chord. Let's look at what I was playing earlier. Played like it is, it appears to be a D major going to its 4 chord, the G major. It's kind of like a typical suspended chord pattern. But when I change the root to G, it gives that D chord a whole new feel. Jazzy, yearning. Why is that? I'll change the G back to its normal position, which is GBD. And then if I descend the D chord, no. Okay. My cat thinks it's time to contribute. Quick, play me a G11. Yeah, okay. No, that's all sharps. Oh no, bad cat. Okay, where was I? Okay, I'll change the G back to its normal position. G, B, D. And then switching to the D chord physically descends from the G, making our ears want to go along with it. But we're holding it back with the root note, instead of going like. So what we're actually doing by voicing that D over the G is we're adding the 7th and the 9th, making it a G major 9 chord. So this is a G major 9 chord. So there's the D. So with the G9 chord, it's like you're playing a D major over G, but you're adding. Got to add that B for the major 3rd. That's your full major 9 chord right there. That's why it sounds so jazzy. So what it's actually doing is adding the 7th and the 9th, making it a G major 9 chord. A pretty jazzy chord you don't hear that much in straightforward pop music. It's a little evocative and also has that tension that demands to be resolved. It's really satisfying to go back and forth between the G and the 9 chord. So this gives you a really comfortable shorthand for a jazzy but dramatic sound. You can hold that same pattern and shift the root notes and you get a really gauzy melodic sound. The shifting of root notes under a chord pattern was quite influential. You can even hear the first echoes of a thicker, more synthy sound in Christopher Cross's second album. And I'd say there's a straight line to huge hits like Jump, abandoning smooth electric pianos for massive synth sounds, and songs like Stand Back. So with that in mind, let's listen to Christopher Cross again, and then the main Magnum theme. I mean, come on, we know Mike Post was spinning Christopher Cross during his presumably coke-filled parties at his Malibu penthouse. But wow, very similar. So that's my introduction to the drop 9 chord pattern, something I've been obsessed with since the early 80s. Now with that in mind, let's explore the main part of the theme song. So we're doing our drop 9 pattern here, and the bass goes to the major 3rd, or B. Making kind of an ascending, very happy sounding pattern. God damn it, cat. I said no! No! And here's my favorite trick in the song. When you use that major 3rd, your ear expects it to keep going up to C here. The next note in the G major scale, like this. And this is a common chord sequence, using the major 3rd to push your ear up to the 4th. You can hear that in songs like Let's Get It On.
I've been really trying, baby.
But that's not what they did here. Instead, they decided to trick us and go to F, which C is the fifth of. Right? Okay, so instead of going... Instead of doing that, we go like this. Ooh. Up until now, we've been strictly in G major. And the F is sharp. But now by going to the F, you could either say we're in G mixolydian, which merely means that the major scale has the last note flattened. And this is very, very common in rock music. Think She Sells Sanctuary or You Really Got Me.
Girl, you really got me going.
Or you could say we switched into C major for a bar, which has all the same notes as G major except for a natural F. At any rate, switching to F here gives us a slightly minor feel, even though it's still major as hell, and we've modulated the exact same drop 9 pattern to F, so we've gone from to. I love modal changes like that. See how I'm switching back between those two very simple chord patterns, yet it sounds rich and complex. It really pulls your ear and helps tell us that there's a hint of danger to this Magnum fellow. So anyway, where do we go from here? To the D major? No sir. We go to the major third of F, which is A. So we go from... And switching to that A gets us nicely back into G major. And then we add back the DG drop 9 chord pattern here. But the root notes change with each chord this time, and we also introduce a C here. Again, we're looping in familiar elements to draw us in and make us want more, like how a comedian uses callbacks. Oh, that's neat. And these notes here, those are the same notes that we use at the end of the triplets, and that's what builds the melody. Anyways, that's interesting. And this all brings us back to G. But this time we don't go to F. We actually continue to C. They actually use that C and D that they tricked us into thinking was coming before. And the ascending pattern tells us something momentous is coming. Take note, on the last two bars, they changed that drop 9 chord pattern into more of a gallop that incorporates the C chord as well. Why do they do that? To prime your ears for the new pattern in the break. Now, where do our ears expect this ascending pattern to go to? The natural conclusion would be E minor. That's the next note in the scale. But that would sound a little predictable and kind of strange because the intro's in E. We've already been there for a while. Their solution? Screw it. Go to E flat. They break up the formula a bit here. They have the chords doing that pattern I pointed out at the end of the main section, but they resolve it on the first chord. So it starts on B flat major, does this drop 9 to the F, so that's our drop 9 pattern. Then it goes to the actual root note here, which is E flat. So it's neat, it resolves to the first chord, but it's actually, instead of the drop 9 happening on the root note of the chord, they shift the root note to the 5th, which is E flat. This gives us the impression of a big, fat E flat 13th chord, and the F major just adds a lot of suspense here. So let's check it out. Then they move to a G sharp with E flat major on top, creating a 13th again. And they're really just playing with this drop 9 pattern to create a cool melodic space where things don't feel like they fully resolve. Perfect for a break. Then in the final measure, they land on an F chord with B flat on the bass. And I just love these weird 13th chords. Yeah, that's such a weird chord. And again, I think, what is that, a 13th? Yeah. They sound so rich and sweet, but kind of mysterious too. A lot of great things can happen when you move chord patterns around with different root notes from the same key. I love hitting these honey spots. They can be very surprising and rewarding. Anyway, now we have a dilemma. How do we get out of E flat and back into G major? We're far ways away from that. What they do in the last measure is they hang for an extra half bar, then give us a moment of intrigue. It gets quiet, too quiet. What's coming next? And ba-da! They do a half step down to A, which gets us back into the G, E minor zone we want to be in. They actually go back to E for the intro. That half step is also reminiscent of the half step from G to F sharp in the intro. That's another callback that I really enjoy. And here we are again having a great but dangerous time with Magnum. It's the same as the first time around. And then the theme song wraps up wisely on big triplets, landing on the E instead of the G. So we finish up on a minor note. It's all very satisfying. Now that I've taken a while to run through the main theory of the song, let's take a look at the main melody and the supporting instruments like the guitar and orchestra. First, I'm going to add the drums. Very simple capital R rock drums with a dry, thick early 80s snare. So what else would be better than Bob Rock drums to get that sound? Oh, that snare's a little too thin. Let's go with a deeper snare. Ah, yes, that's it. I'm going to add some staccato strings here for the intro. After some experimenting, I'm going to go with the Contact Library strings. They sound really punchy, and I'll probably layer them with something else. The strings basically shadow the piano for the intro. And then the strings switch to sustain there on the last measure to do the melody in the main section. So the sustained strings take those last three notes where we land on a D, which is the 5th of G, and that's where our melody starts. and it breaks into a very pleasant melodic run. I just love how this sounds. It's very lush. Kind of 70s, but 80s too. On the second measure, it does something really interesting and more 70s sounding. It runs through the notes of a G major 7 chord, adding in a sweet little F sharp before landing back on the G. Wait, where have I heard that before?
Come and knock on our door. Come and knock on our door.
Oh, okay, well these composers traveled in the same circles then. Anyway, it does the nice major 7 thing, then the strings mostly shadow the piano chords in the break, doing the... I'm going to layer in another set of strings for the staccato and the sustain to get a little more realism. I find if one sample library sounds a little stiff, then I try to layer it with something that has more vibrato or a slower attack, so it doesn't sound so static. If you have a good solo violin, layering that in is a good idea as well. I'm going to layer in the excellent Project Sam short strings. This is free, go grab it. I'll put the link down below. And next is the brass. I love the brass in this. It's almost like they are auditioning to be the next James Bond composers. I'm going to start with the orchestral brass section from Cubase's excellent Iconicus sketch, and then I'll add some dry, tighter horns on top of that. And the brass is quite prominent in the break. Again, it's just shadowing the chords that the piano and the strings are doing. It sounds pretty close, Mike, so I'm going to use my Akai samples, nice dry ones. And I quickly add the bass guitar here. Bass guitar is pretty straightforward. Yeah, the biggest things to note are in the intro. The bass holds back and does the little off notes during the intro. Bong, bong, bong. Wait, did you hear that? Check this out. It's gonna solo the intro. Did you hear that flat note? Honk. One of the players whiffed the note. Wow, okay, I just checked back. That flat note was in every episode of Magnum PI for 8 seasons, and no one caught it. Wonder what note that is. Yeah, it's just a flat note. I think it might be an E flat. I should keep it in there for authenticity. Okay, now the fun part. I get to play the guitar part. The original sounds like a Tele or a Strat played through an old Marshall with a Boss chorus pedal. A fairly unremarkable guitar sound, but it's totally perfect. I'm just going to recreate this with Slate THU and a chorus pedal. Wow, I hope you enjoyed exploring the Magnum PI theme as much as I did. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I love hearing from you. and use my affiliate links to support the channel. Until next time, mix well.